think back to the very first thing you ever posted on social media. Like dig deep into those archives, if you can even find them.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is a scary thought.
Right. But if you look, you weren't, optimizing for an algorithm. You weren't trying to build this polished personal brand.
Definitely not. I mean, nobody was.
Exactly. You were probably just announcing to the absolute void that you were like currently eating a sandwich or complaining about the weather.
Yeah, it is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters, historically speaking. Like, we look back at that era and find this entirely uncurated landscape.
Yeah.
There was no sense that we were writing the permanent digital record of humanity. We were just, occupying space.
And that right there, that is a totally lost era of human connection, which brings us to welcome you to today's deep dive.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one.
Me too. So we are taking a look at a really fascinating, deeply reflective Japanese blog post. It's titled, "You and I Were Both Young, Quiet Beef."
Right. Written by an author who goes by the handle Quiet Beef back in March of 2021.
Yeah, and our mission today is to use this single, just incredibly poignant essay as sort of a time machine. We're going to explore the mechanics of online communities and really trace the migration of users across platforms.
Yeah, examining that structural evolution of the internet, like how we went from a cozy local pub to a screaming public square.
Exactly. And ultimately, we're going to unpack this profound philosophical theory on the biological and psychological reasons we eventually, age out of posting altogether.
And what makes Quiet Beef's essay so compelling is that he isn't writing a technical manual here or like an academic paper on network theory.
Right. It's deeply personal.
Exactly. It's a personal memoir. He's writing about his own shifting friend groups and honestly his own aging body. But in doing so, he kind of accidentally manages to capture the universal sociological shift of the last 15 years of the internet.
He totally diagnoses the exact mechanism of why the web feels so massively different now than it did in, say, 2010. So the entire essay was actually triggered by a single tweet. It went viral in early 2021, which was right before the 10th anniversary of the March 11th earthquake in Japan.
Right. And the tweet itself from a user named Moshikopi, it was just pure nostalgia.
Pure nostalgia. The user was talking with her husband about how back in the early days of Twitter, people would literally just tweet things like, "In the bath now."
It's brilliant, honestly, in its simplicity. Like the user pointed out, there was zero desire to be useful.
None.
The whole concept of, going viral or providing value to this theoretical audience just didn't exist in the cultural lexicon yet.
Yeah, it was just this pure, simple joy that strangers were like existing at the exact same time as you.
Right. The tweet explicitly noted that they didn't even know the word buzz. They were just deeply moved by the simultaneous existence of other people.
I love that phrase so much, simultaneous existence. It completely reframes what the architecture of early social media was even designed to do.
Yeah, it really does.
Because today, the platforms you and I use, they're built for broadcasting. You're basically a television station, and your followers are the audience.
Right. The architecture practically demands a performance from you.
Exactly. But back then, the architecture facilitated presence, not performance.
Right. It was ambient awareness. You weren't trying to entertain someone with the fact that you were taking a bath.
Right. Like, hey, look at me in the bath. Please like and subscribe.
Exactly. You were just pinging the network to say, I am alive and I am here. And then someone else on the network would pin back, I am also alive and I am eating toast.
I mean, it created this low-stakes web of peripheral connection. You felt surrounded by a community without the heavy burden of having to actually entertain them.
It's like sonar for humans.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Just sending out a ping to map the room and make sure you aren't alone in the dark.
Yeah. And Quiet Beef describes the Japanese Twitter landscape back in 2007 to illustrate this. He says it was so empty that cuckoo birds sang, which is like a Japanese idiom for complete peaceful desertion.
Right. He refers to the Japanese users at that time as rare properties because it was an entirely uncrowded space.
It was. And to understand how different the cultural perception of the platform was, Quiet Beef brings up a really specific historical example.
Yeah, the comedian.
Right. He mentions a Japanese comedian named Suidobashi Hakase, and he was an early adopter and essentially functioned as a domestic billboard for Twitter in Japan at the time.
He was everywhere talking about it.
He was.
Yeah.
Hakase would do these magazine interviews actively pitching Twitter to the general public. And his primary selling point wasn't, that you could get famous or read the breaking news.
No, he described it as a peaceful space. which is just wild to think about today.
It's hilarious.
Yeah.
He told people there was hardly anyone trolling or inciting. He was actively encouraging everyone to join precisely because it was so calm. Like early Twitter sounds like a small town diner. You walk in, you wave at someone through the window, say, having coffee, and they say, I'm having pie.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally low friction.
Right. Whereas today, the architecture resembles, I don't know, a national debate stage.
Yeah.
Where everyone is handed a megaphone, the lights are blinding, and half the audience is literally incentivized by the platform to throw tomatoes at you.
Yeah. But looking at the mechanics of network growth, wasn't this transition just inevitable? Like, I struggle to buy into the pure nostalgia of the essay here sometimes.
Oh, interesting. Why?
Because can any space remain a low-friction diner once millions of people discover it?
It feels like the moment Suidobashi Hakase went to national magazines and said, come on in, he triggered the tragedy of the commons.
Right.
The diner was mathematically doomed to become a stadium the moment it scaled, wasn't it?
Well, you're touching on a fundamental law of network dynamics there, for sure. But Quiet Beef points out that the transition in Japan wasn't just like a slow, natural trickle of new users gradually changing the culture.
The sudden influx, the scaling from that quiet diner to the screaming stadium, it was an abrupt demographic shock.
Oh, right.
It was essentially a digital refugee crisis, and it was sparked by an architectural and corporate betrayal on a completely different platform.
Right. The timeline here is super critical.
Right.
Because we moved from the peaceful diner of 2007 into absolute chaos right around 2010.
Yeah.
The blog details this massive, sudden influx of Japanese users just flooding onto Twitter. And they didn't just casually wander in. They were literally running from something.
Fleeing, yeah.
They were fleeing a platform called Mixi.
So Mixi was the legacy social networking site in Japan. It was this massive established kingdom that the people who had been on the internet for years, they had meticulously built it.
Right.
It operated on what Quiet Beef calls a social networking style. It was super text-heavy, focused on journals, communities, and slow, deliberate interactions.
Like a cozy digital living room.
Exactly. But right around 2010, Mixi made a really drastic shift in its business model and its underlying architecture.
They shifted their entire focus to gaming, right? They wanted to target a younger demographic and monetize their attention way more aggressively.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Quiet Beef calls Mixi at this moment the ruthless demon of rationalism.
Mm-hmm.
Which is just such an intense, perfect phrase. It perfectly captures that specific cold moment when a tech company stops seeing you as a foundational community member and starts seeing you purely as an undermonetized data point.
Absolutely. And to understand why this alienated the user base so profoundly, we have to look at the mechanics of that pivot. Mixi didn't just, add some games to a sidebar.
Right.
They changed the core loops of the site. They replaced those quiet text feeds where older users shared long-form blogs with noisy, gamified mechanics designed to just trap teenagers' attention.
So the older users didn't just leave voluntarily?
No, they were essentially gentrified out of their own digital neighborhoods. The environment became hostile to the exact way they wanted to communicate.
And that creates the digital refugee. These are users who have lost their online home, their community center, but they lack the collective coordination to instantly build a new one.
Because you can't just mandate that thousands of interconnected people move to a new URL simultaneously.
No, you definitely can't. So they just lingered. The author notes they were half abandoned, kind of lingering in discontent within the walls of Mixi, knowing the architecture no longer served them, but having literally nowhere to go.
Until the tipping point was reached. In network theory, this is akin to a digital bank run.
Digital bank run?
Yeah. A social network derives its value entirely from the presence of other people, right?
Right.
So once a critical mass of early adopters decides to actually leave, the social value of the platform collapses practically overnight.
Wow, okay.
And that forces the remaining majority to evacuate just to maintain their social connections. Quiet Beef jokes about an unseen push, like an ad agency conspiracy that suddenly caused all these Mixi refugees to rush into Twitter at the exact same moment.
He compares it to kids playing Ready, Set, Go and just stampeding through the doors all at once.
Yeah.
So the author, who had been sitting in his peaceful empty diner since 2007, is suddenly surrounded by this roaring crowd. But the real catalyst, the event that truly cemented Twitter's place in the Japanese consciousness and altered its DNA permanently, it wasn't just this corporate migration.
No.
It was a physical, real-world catastrophe.
Yeah.
March 11th, 2011, the Great East Japan Earthquake.
Right. The blog details how this tragic, world-altering event transformed Twitter almost overnight. It went from being a casual playground where people talked about taking baths to a vital, life-saving utility.
Yeah.
The platform's architecture, which was fast, asynchronous, mobile-friendly broadcasting it, was perfectly suited for a massive crisis.
The author details how it became absolutely essential for checking on the safety of family members living far away and for helping, stranded commuters navigate home when all the trains stopped.
Right, routing emergency information.
The user base accelerated massively because joining was no longer a matter of digital curiosity. It was literally a matter of civic and personal safety.
And this highlights a crucial insight about how platforms evolve. A platform's destiny isn't solely written in its code or dictated by its algorithms.
No.
It is shaped by its collision with physical reality. Twitter was just a novelty until a natural disaster proved it was a highly efficient utility.
That is so true. The platform didn't change its code in that moment. The physical world's need for the platform's specific architecture changed.
Exactly.
But here's the thing. Once a platform becomes a utility, once everyone literally has to be on it for safety or logistics, the nature of the community permanently shifts.
Oh, for sure.
You completely lose that self-selecting culture of early adopters. And right as Twitter was solidifying this massive utilitarian identity in Japan, a global giant started knocking on the door, trying to force an entirely different kind of network onto the population.
Yes, the Facebook resistance.
The Facebook resistance. The author recalls how early Twitter users formed this fierce, almost ideological resistance movement against Facebook. Everyone on Twitter was mutually declaring, I will never go to Facebook.
It was a badge of honor to reject it.
It really was. And the rejection was rooted in the fundamental differences in platform architecture. Twitter allowed for pseudonyms, right? It let you connect over shared interests rather than shared geography or biology.
You didn't need to know someone in real life to value their ping on the network.
Exactly. But Facebook demanded your real legal identity. And it demanded you map your physical past onto the digital world. The biggest complaint from these users, interestingly, was the notifications.
Yeah, Quiet Beef talks about how pushy and invasive it felt to get emails saying, your friends are waiting for you.
Yeah, so aggressive.
It felt like a violation of the casual, opt-in nature of the internet they preferred. Facebook was essentially weaponizing social guilt to build its graph. It was saying, if you don't join, you are actively ignoring people who care about you.
It's such a heavy-handed tactic. The sentiment was just a straight-up rebellion against obvious corporate inducement. They'd come to Twitter organically, and they refused to do exactly what the advertising agencies wanted them to do by joining this highly structured real-name database.
Right.
Yet, despite all this fiery, principled resistance, they completely caved.
They absolutely caved because the pull of the social graph is ultimately stronger than the friction of the interface.
Yeah.
The author attributes it to yielding to the majority. People started rationalizing, saying, well, I'll just open an account just to secure my name. And honestly, that's all it takes. Once you exist on the platform, the network effect begins to reel you in.
Quiet Beef's own experience joining Facebook illustrates this perfectly. He actually joined the moment Facebook expanded beyond Ivy League schools and general universities.
Right.
He was looking for a very specific structured utility.
Right.
An alumni network. But at first, the Japanese user base was practically non-existent. He calls them super rare properties. So he got bored and ignored the account for years until the dam broke again.
The Mixi refugees had finally surrendered to the network effect. The author describes a sudden flood of friend requests arriving out of nowhere.
Yeah, he compares it to being a pop star getting a mountain of Valentine's chocolates.
It's a great visual, but yeah, the migration was completely finished at that point.
But finding a new home doesn't mean leaving your cultural baggage behind. And this is where Quiet Beef introduces a really brilliant concept. He describes the immediate atmospheric change on Facebook the moment the Japanese user base exploded.
Right.
He says he felt a spinal reflex to abandon it because it had instantly turned into what he called Blue Mixi.
Blue Mixi, it's such a great term. It means that the users had brought the exact same culture, the exact same social dynamics, and the exact same peer pressure from the platform they fled, and just superimposed it onto Facebook's Blue interface.
Yeah.
It proves that a platform isn't just its code, it's the accumulated habits of its users.
Absolutely. He talks about the stench of peer pressure. Everyone was writing different things, living different lives, but there was this overarching shared pressure to conform that immediately filled the room.
It's suffocating.
And beyond the cultural baggage, Quiet Beef points to a critical architectural flaw that inherently breeds fatigue, which is the timeline itself.
Yeah, when you take hundreds of people from different contexts of your life, coworkers, high school friends, family members, internet acquaintances, and force all of their thoughts into a single chronological feed, friction is literally inevitable.
Yeah.
This is known in sociology as context collapse.
Context collapse, right. Quiet Beef notes that when his college friends arrived on Facebook, their timelines were suddenly flooded with exhausting ideological battles.
Yeah.
He specifically recalls watching his alumni friends tear into each other over highly charged political issues.
Yeah.
He uses the example of gun control debates between Texas conservatives and liberals. And just to be extremely clear for you listening, we're not taking any stance on those specific political debates, obviously. We're just impartially reporting the author's specific examples of what he considers exhausting timeline noise.
Exactly. Whether you align with either side of those specific debates isn't the point of his essay at all. For the author, the sheer exhaustion of watching people he used to casually know suddenly locked in bitter, entrenched ideological combat in the middle of his digital living room, it was just overwhelming.
He describes his reaction simply as, "I'm already full." He couldn't stomach the constant conflict.
Yeah.
The timeline format creates an environment where every thought is broadcast to everyone, totally stripping away the nuance of knowing your audience. And this exhaustion, this timeline fatigue, is what drives the next massive migration.
People didn't just leave Facebook, they began to rethink the concept of public broadcasting entirely.
Which brings us to the core mystery of the essay, the Shibuya Hachiko problem. The blog really shifts here from being a history of tech platforms to a deeply personal reflection on human relationships and platform decay.
Yeah, it gets really introspective.
Quiet Beef asks us to look at a specific group of friends he made on Twitter around 2010, right as those Mixi refugees were settling in.
He describes them as mostly women in their early to late 30s. And they represented an incredibly diverse cross-section of society. You know, single women, married women, career women climbing the corporate ladder, housewives, mothers.
Very diverse.
They had vastly different daily lives, but they maintained a comfortable distance and engaged with each other regularly in this shared digital space.
Fast forward 10 years to 2021, when he is actually writing this post. He looks at this group of vibrant, highly engaged friends, and every single one of them is a ghost.
Yeah.
He calls them empty shells or husk accounts. The profile pictures are still there, the old tweets are archived, but the people behind them haven't posted a single thing in years.
And it is a phenomenon we all recognize, right? Like, you look through your own following list and realize how many loud daily posters simply vanished into thin air somewhere around, 2017.
Oh, so many.
The analytical question Quiet Beef poses is, why did they leave? And the surface-level answer points to another structural shift in how Japanese people communicated online, which was the rise of the app Line.
Line is a private messaging app, deeply ubiquitous in Japan, used for literally everything from texting to payments. But Quiet Beef identifies that Line didn't win just because it had better features.
Right.
It won because it offered an escape hatch from the public square.
And to explain why the public square became intolerable, he uses a phenomenal analogy. He compares posting on Twitter to standing in front of Shibuya Hachiko and shouting your opinions in a loud voice.
Yes.
For context, the Hachiko statue is at the Shibuya crossing in Tokyo, which is one of the busiest, most chaotic, most heavily trafficked pedestrian intersections on the entire planet.
Imagine physically walking to the middle of Times Square or the Shibuya crossing, taking a deep breath and screaming at the top of your lungs. I think the pacing in the new Marvel movie was a bit slow.
Right.
Or shouting, "I'm currently eating pasta."
It's absurd.
It is fundamentally unhinged behavior in the physical world. Yet, that is exactly what public broadcasting on a scaled social network demands of you.
And Quiet Beef observes that for these women and for users in general, this performative public shouting became increasingly unnatural. Especially after the earthquake, the digital space felt heavier.
Much heavier.
The stakes were higher, the scrutiny was intense, and the potential for that context collapse was constant. So when Line came along and offered closed, private group chats, a digital architecture that resembled a private karaoke room rather than a public intersection, they took the exit.
I do struggle with this part of his premise, though.
Really? How come?
I mean, I get the sociology of retreating from a noisy public square, but people don't just lose their personalities, right?
Sure.
If the Shibuya crossing got too loud and the scrutiny was too high, why wouldn't they just make anonymous alt accounts to keep complaining about movies or sharing their hobbies?
Yeah.
Retreating to private chats like Line only explains where they put their personal conversations.
That's a fair point.
It doesn't explain why the desire to broadcast opinions to the broader world vanished entirely. Leaving the public internet feels like a massive overreaction if the only problem was the interface,
See, that skepticism is exactly the bridge to the deepest truth of the essay. Quiet Beef anticipates that argument. He says, yes, Line was a factor in changing the location of communication.
Okay.
But it doesn't explain the cessation of public energy. It's not that they lacked things to say or that they couldn't figure out how to make a burner account. It's about a fundamental, inescapable biological and psychological paradigm shift. They didn't just change apps. They aged 10 years.
And this right here is the philosophical heart of the source material. He points out the invisible psychological weight of a decade. He spells it out by looking at the specific lives of those women.
Yeah.
The mother, whose biggest worry in 2010 was her 9-year-old scraped knee in elementary school homework, is now lying awake in 2021, agonizing over a 19-year-old entering a brutal job market or navigating adult relationships.
Right.
The stakes of daily life have transformed completely.
And for the career women who were 30 in 2010, they are now 40. They've moved from being junior employees responsible only for themselves to middle management.
Oh, it's a huge shift.
Massive.
Yeah.
The responsibility, the emotional labor of managing others, and the sheer difficulty of navigating corporate politics during a volatile global economic situation, the stress has just skyrocketed.
He lists out the real-world issues that can detonate in a person's life over a decade. Things like layoffs, a spouse's infidelity leading to a messy divorce, a child rebelling and ending up in the juvenile justice system, the sudden onset of a severe mental health issue.
Yeah.
He notes that even if not all of these disasters happen to everyone, something heavy happens to everyone. The weight of physical reality sets in.
And this leads to Quiet Beef's most brilliant synthesis, which is the economic theory of youth capital.
Youth capital.
He argues that engaging with social media, having the desire, the wit, and the surplus energy to post, to argue, to play the public broadcasting game, it requires a baseline of your life going relatively well.
You need to be in a safe, stable place to actually care about internet drama. But he goes even deeper into the psychology of youth. He says that when you are young, even if things in your immediate present are going badly, even if you're broke or unhappy or struggling, you still possess a massive invisible asset.
Right.
You possess the capital of the rest of your life.
Because you have a massive reservoir of unspent time ahead of you, that time acts as a psychological buffer against current failures. It funds a deep subconscious baseline optimism.
Yeah.
It allows you to brush off setbacks with the thought, it'll work out somehow.
He uses the Japanese phrase Nantona Kunaruyo,
Yeah.
which loosely translates to things will manage to sort themselves out.
Yeah.
That underlying optimism, funded entirely by the biological reality of having decades left to live, gives you a massive surplus of emotional energy. And you spend that surplus energy engaging with the trivialities of the internet.
Exactly.
You can afford to care about a stranger's opinion on a movie or get into a debate on a timeline because your own future feels expansive, flexible, and ultimately fixable.
But fast forward 10 years. A massive chunk of that capital has been spent. The runway is objectively shorter. The author states that the endorsement, the internal guarantee that it'll work out, starts to become fragile.
Oh, man.
You can no longer assume you have the time or the elasticity to fix a ruined career or a broken marriage.
Because that capital is depleted, your emotional surplus disappears. It's like social media engagement is a luxury tax. You pay this tax with your emotional energy and your free time.
Right.
When you're young, your emotional bank account is overflowing with youth capital. You easily afford the tax. But when your real-world emotional budget gets incredibly tight because of aging, sick parents, and life-altering crises, you cut the luxury tax first.
Yeah, you stop paying the toll to argue at the Shibuya crossing. Yeah. He makes a point that is incredibly stark regarding what captures our attention as we age. He notes that when you are dealing with the heavy, unyielding realities of middle age, when you are navigating a teenager in trouble, or a failing marriage, or a grueling management job, the noise of the broader internet simply ceases to penetrate your consciousness.
Quiet Beef lists examples of the massive, abstract topics that dominate timeline discourse. He mentions arguments over global geopolitics, the administration of Donald Trump, conspiracy theories spreading online, or debates about the Chinese Communist Party.
Right.
And again, to be totally clear, his point isn't to validate or invalidate any side of those massive global issues. We're completely neutral on that.
Exactly. We're just citing his examples.
Right. His point is entirely about human bandwidth. He writes that when a person is facing immense personal life crises in their physical home, those sprawling, abstract online dramas suddenly do not matter from the bottom of their heart.
The geopolitical discourse and the culture wars that consume the digital public square simply cannot compete with the immediate, visceral reality of your physical life requiring triage.
Yeah.
The emotional bandwidth required to maintain outrage or engagement about abstract global issues is reallocated to literal survival and family maintenance. You let the Twitter account become a shell because the currency required to maintain it is needed desperately in the physical world.
And the essay doesn't just keep this theory in the realm of psychology or emotional bandwidth. Quiet Beef grounds it in unavoidable biological mechanics.
He really does.
It actually takes physical dopamine and a surplus of cortisol to sustain online arguments and maintain a digital persona. When your body begins to age, your brain literally reprioritizes its energy budget away from digital posturing to biological maintenance.
He is incredibly blunt about the physical paradigm shifts of aging. He moves from the psychological burden directly to the biological degradation of the vessel that holds the youth capital.
He lists the stark realities of hitting your 40s and 50s. For women, he notes the onset of menopause around age 50, which he correctly identifies as a massive, exhausting, full-body paradigm shift.
Yeah.
For men, he details hitting 40 and watching your hair turn white, or, as he clinically puts it, watching the exposure rate of the scalp begin to rise.
Which is such a funny, sad way to say you're going bald.
Right.
Yeah.
He talks about the cascade of physical ailments, weight gain leading to metabolic issues, the appearance of erectile dysfunction, the sheer exhaustion of chronic back pain.
He even delves into the indignities of digestive and urinary health. Hemorrhoids tearing, the feeling of incomplete urination, the reality of minor incontinence.
It's rough.
It is gritty and it is almost uncomfortably honest, but it is necessary to complete his theory.
Because the playful, optimistic energy required to craft the perfect tweet, to engage in witty banter, to shout into the Shibuya crossing, it simply fades as your physical vitality fades. When your body is constantly inflamed, when you are dealing with the sheer inflammatory stress of aging, the desire to tell strangers you are in the bath now completely evaporates. The timeline of your body entirely overrides the timeline on your screen.
Yet despite the heavy reality of biological aging and platform decay, the author's conclusion elevates the entire essay from a melancholic observation into a profound celebration.
It really is beautiful.
He realizes the text has become quite dark, and he explicitly clarifies, I am not writing a suicide note here.
He steps back and says he is just an old man reminiscing. The essay isn't a tragic farewell to the internet. It is a quiet acknowledgement. He is looking out over the digital graveyard of these empty shell accounts, these missing friends from 2010, and he is saying to them, I remember you.
He writes, 10 years ago, I was young in my own way, and thinking about it now, every day was fun and happy. And he addresses those ghost accounts directly, saying, you guys who have accounts but has stopped tweeting, you were full of curiosity and young back then too.
You and I were both young. It is a celebration of a specific, fleeting moment in time that can never be recreated, neither technologically nor biologically.
Right.
They shared a brief era of simultaneous existence in the peaceful diner, before the crowds rushed in, before the algorithms demanded performance, and before the physical world got too heavy to carry.
He ends with a beautiful, quiet bow to the people who shared his youth. It was fun playing with you, even for a short time. Please take care of yourself from now on.
Yeah.
And he leaves the reader with a deeply resonant final directive. Tomorrow you will be older than today. Celebrate today's youth and welcome tomorrow happily.
Celebrate today's youth because the capital is always spending down. And that forces us to look critically at our own relationship with the digital spaces we inhabit right now. Which brings me to the final thought I want to leave you, the listener, with today. Something to mull over as you close out this deep dive and inevitably open another app on your phone.
Yeah, what does all this mean for us now?
If our social media timelines are essentially just graveyards of our past, optimistic selves, heavily subsidized by the surplus energy of youth. What does that mean for the architecture of the internet we are building today? Are today's platforms, with their algorithmic demands for endless friction and performance, even capable of capturing the innocence of a bath now moment?
That's a great question.
Or have we engineered a digital world that fundamentally alienates us as we age, catering only to the endless exhausting supply of new youth capital, while leaving the rest of us with no choice but to quietly become ghosts? Think about that the next time you find yourself standing at the digital Shibuya crossing.
If you enjoyed this, smash the like button and hit subscribe so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next video.